So today we kind of wrap up our Lenten series, which we called The Horror of Sin. And I think it connects well because, for it to be a quality movie, there's key components that need to be met. And we're actually going to connect with one of those that's in that scary genre of movies today. With our message. Our discussion today connects. And it's that part in those tension-filled, scary kind of films where the heroes believe that they've triumphed, right? It's about 80% of the way through the movie. The heroes have triumphed over the villain, over the monster, right? And maybe it's the villain or the monster fell off the bridge and they're going down to check for the body, and they get to the exact spot where it fell, and there's nothing, right? And so they know, somehow it survived. Or, better yet, they find the body, and as they start to relax, what happens? It comes back to life. It lurches out. It grabs at them. And so they scream, and so do you. I mean, there's a phrase for this, right, within movies. It's called the jump scare, right? And it's fun because I'm kind of immune to this, so I like to go to these kind of movies and watch other people jump out of their seats, okay? And that may seem odd, but that's what we're going to be talking about today. The things that we believe are dead that are going to try to reach out and grab for us continually. Last week, obviously, Easter, we're celebrating the perfect life of Jesus, his death and his resurrection, which gives us victory over sin and death. And then we kind of come back to this idea, right? We leave Sunday celebrating victory over sin and death, and we experience temptation again. We experience the pull of sin on our life, and we're like, wait a minute, we just celebrated victory over this. What in the world is going on? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to call today killing sin, because the old school word for this we don't use anymore: mortification. So we're talking about killing sin. How do we kill our sin today? In order to understand that in a practical way, we got to understand the big picture. So I want to walk through with you this morning the big picture before we step into practically how do we step towards this, because we're called as followers of Jesus, we're called as Christians, we're called as disciples, that our part of sanctification is killing sin. So here's some passages that you might be familiar with, and what I want you to see in these passages is that Paul, in all of these, talks about it in a past tense sort of way. Right? So Galatians 2:20 says, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. Galatians 5:24, those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh, past, with its passions and its desires. Romans 6:6, our old self was crucified with him so that the body ruled by sin might be done away with. And so what I want you to see is there is a picture here of what happened at salvation. Right? We talked about this leading up to Easter. We talked about it at Easter. Right? That there's a sense in which I've cried out, Lord, I need salvation. I need your help. I can't save myself from all of this. And in that moment, all of my sin lands on Jesus, past, present, and future. He takes that debt, and I receive the perfect life of Jesus. That is seen. Okay? And so my sins, I have been crucified with Christ. That's salvation. Okay, but what's interesting is what we're going to see today is there's also mention of this as in the present tense, as something that we need to continue to do, right? Because what happened at salvation, we saw, is we get a new heart and a new spirit, but we did not lose that sin nature. That sin nature is still inside of us. And so now it's about putting that away over and over and over again and living out of that new heart and that new spirit. The New Testament talks about two different elements. It talks about sin nature and it talks about the flesh. And so I want to walk through that with you quickly today as well. So sin nature, as the New Testament describes it, is our inner condition. It's what we look like kind of after the fall, because we have that sin nature. We're born with it. We're going to see that in a second. It's who we are because of the fall. The flesh, when Paul talks about the flesh, that's how that condition shows up and operates in my daily life. And so there's two separate things that kind of work together. Okay? The sin nature is that inherited, like we've talked about that week after week after week. It's that spiritual DNA that gets passed down from Adam and Eve to the rest of us, just like all of the genes that we get from the physical genes we get from our families. We also receive this, right? So it's an inherited internal bent towards sin. It's something deep inside of us that we have within our human nature. It's the source of those sinful desires that we have. It exists even before you act on it. That's kind of horrific, isn't it? It's like the still water, but there's something underneath that's what sin nature is. And it explains why some of those sins in our lives seem so natural. Right? When you start to have some of those thoughts like, is this really sin? It just seems so natural. Right? Where do we get some of these things? We've looked at these verses, many of these verses already. Romans 5:12, sin came into the world through one man, right? Through Adam, sin entered. We saw David talk about this in Psalm 51:5, that surely I was sinful at birth. He went a step further and said, I was conceived in sin. Right? And that sin puts up a natural barrier between us and God, a wall between us and God, that God said, I don't want to lose humanity. And so this is the plan to save humanity. But until we are saved, Ephesians 2:3 says, by nature, children of wrath, because of that sin, nature, and flesh. And so how do we get a good picture of what this is? So I'm going to give you a couple examples, a couple pictures today that hopefully you can walk out of here with. But think about sin nature like a corrupted root system in a tree. Right? Like you can't see it, that something's going on deep inside the tree, deep inside the soil, and it's impacting what you can see of that tree. And that part of it is the next discussion, flesh. Okay, so the flesh, and this is specifically in what we see in the New Testament with Paul, this refers to the active, lived-out tendency to follow those sinful desires. Right? And so this is where we see in our lives the habits, the impulses we have, the patterns of behavior. Right? So it starts in that sin nature deep within us, and it kind of activates the flesh. And the flesh kind of lives out of that nature, out of that root. Right? It's how the sin nature expresses itself through your body and mind. That's the flesh. Right? And what we see is that Scripture tells us that we're living in that sin nature, when we're living in the flesh, right, that our mind is opposed to God. It's not just pushing us away from God, our mindset is against God. And so we see that again in a variety of passages. Galatians 5:16 through 7 says, the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit. Like when I'm living in the flesh and walking and responding to sin nature, walking in the flesh, it's the opposite of what the Spirit wants me to do. It's contrary. Romans 8:7 says, the mind set on the flesh is hostile to God. And Galatians 5:19 through 21 says, the works of the flesh are evident. It's obvious when we're walking in the flesh, right? And so think of the flesh kind of like the visible branches and the fruit, or maybe the lack of fruit that's growing from that corrupted root. And so that's a picture of sin nature and flesh, and obviously they work together, right? Sin nature produces desires, are stirred up within us, and the flesh is kind of activated to respond to those desires within us. Right? And so an example of this would be, sin nature would be, I have a tendency toward pride. That's deep within us. Right? The flesh piece of that is I respond to that tendency towards pride by boasting, by being cocky, right? By seeking attention, putting myself in a position where I'm going to get attention, and if I don't get attention, I resent those who aren't giving me attention, right? So we have that sin nature, that root that's producing that desire, and then the flesh picks up on this and continues to carry it out. Another way we can remember it is sin nature is like the engine of a car. Right? And the flesh then is how the car is driven. If everything is right within the engine, here's how the car reacts to those things. And so this is what we're called to fight against, to wrestle against, to struggle against. We don't see a mentality of let go and let God, and God's just going to magically, on His own, without you doing anything, change you. It's a partnership. We've been justified, we've been saved, and then we move into sanctification. The Spirit is working within us, and we join the Spirit in the work of sanctification. And that is to fight sin nature and flesh. Jesus talked about this fight in Luke 9:23 through 26. And He said to all, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. I just want to point something out. We in the West, and maybe not just the West, but we have made following Jesus and discipleship optional. Like you can be a Christian, or you can be a Christian that's a disciple. And I'm here to tell you, we don't see that anywhere in the Bible. And so Jesus is saying, if you are a Christian, and if you are following after me, your battle is going to be daily. Notice that daily. I wish I underlined and bolded that for you. This is something that we are going to have to fight daily. And I'm just going to be honest with you. Like there are some things in my life that nailing it to the cross in the morning, I'm going to be back at the foot of the cross in a couple hours if I'm living life right to nail it again, because it's not dead. And it's trying to get me. So Jesus said, if anyone would come after me, like let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. I'm putting myself and those sinful desires of the flesh on the cross. And it's going to feel some days like I'm losing my life when I'm actually saving it. And again, it's something that we have to do daily. Like, what does it profit a man if he gains the world but loses his soul? It's interesting that the connection to this is the cross. The connection to this is denying myself, fighting against sin nature and the flesh. One of my favorite Puritan preachers and authors, his name is John Owen. And again, I mentioned that really they called this whole thing of like killing your sin mortification. And it's really one of the best quotes. It stuck with me for many, many years, but it clearly defines what's on the line if we don't, and what we're supposed to do as disciples of Jesus Christ. And his quote is pretty simple. It's this: be killing sin, or sin will be killing you. Be killing sin, or sin will be killing you. And there's a variety of places where he kind of got that statement, that teaching. But we're just going to look at a few today and then kind of unpack that statement and move it into the practical as we close out. But Romans 8:12 through 13 says this: brothers, we are debtors not to the flesh, to live according to the flesh. For if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if by the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the body, you will live. So you can kind of see that statement in there. Like, we better be active in capturing what's inside of us, right? And think about how opposite this is to our world. What does our world say? Right, we talked about this with Disney and other things. Like, your heart is good. Follow your heart. If you feel it, do it. This is saying, man, you got to be careful. Like, within you, yes, there's some good, right? If you're a follower of Jesus, you have a new heart and a new spirit, but you also have sin nature. So you better be good at filtering what's coming out and saying, is this of the Spirit or is this of the flesh? If you live according to the flesh, you will die. Now that means, like, hey, if we sin, we know physical death is the response to this. But I also think this is a nuanced statement. If I let sin run rampant in my life, if I'm not intentional to killing sin, that sin is going to kill my relationships. It's going to kill my family. It's going to kill my congregation. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to stay with me. It's going to spread. It's going to spread in me, and it's going to spread and impact every relationship that I have. Another place we see this idea is in Colossians 3:5 through 10. So be killing sin, or sin will be killing you. Paul said this: put to death, therefore, what is earthly in you. And he gives us a list here: sexual immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, covetousness, which is idolatry. On the count of these, the wrath of God is coming. In these you too once walked when you were living in them. But now you must put them all away: anger, wrath, malice, slander, and obscene talk from your mouth. Do not lie to one another, seeing that you have put off the old self with its practices and have put on the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge after the image of the Creator. We're going to get back to that as a really practical hint here, right? When we take we take away the flesh and we're nailing it to here's the sin I'm struggling with, and I'm nailing it to the cross. I've got to replace it with something. Did you see that? Like, you don't just take it off and walk around empty. You got to put something on. You have to fill yourself. And so we'll get back to that in a second. But be killing sin, or sin will be killing you. What does this statement mean practically? And what I want you to do at this part is does this look like me? Is this what I am doing in my walk with the Lord? I want you to think about that. So be killing sin means you should be deliberately resisting, weakening, and removing sinful patterns, not ignoring them or letting them slide. Like, I'll be honest, there are some things that I quickly confess and put to the side, kind of ignore them, letting them slide. I don't think that definition shows what I'm doing to every sinful impulse in my life. Deliberately resisting, weakening, and removing sinful patterns. It means that we've grown passive. Sin is not passive, but many of us are treating sin in a passive way. And I think it's a misunderstanding of grace and mercy and love of God. And we say, like, we confess that, and then but we're not wrestling with it. We're not kicking it out of our lives. We're not cutting it out of our lives. We're not making different choices about what's coming in. We've gotten a little bit lazy. So if we're not killing sin, it's going to be killing us. If we don't deal with those behaviors, right, it's going to gradually harm us spiritually, emotionally, and again, in our actions and in our relationships. As I said, sin isn't passive. It grows and it spreads if it's left unchecked. We kind of think this is the sin, and this is where it sits in my life, and this is where it stays in my life. And that's a lie from Satan. Because that thing moves. It bumps into other things. It activates other sinful desires in my life because I've let it sit. Maybe I've confessed, but it hasn't been true repentance. And I've gotten casual and passive with it. We like gray, right? We like gray areas in our life. And I think this is an area where we've allowed the gray to take over. And this is why I like to occasionally go back and read the Puritans, because they're like, there's no gray area. There's no neutral ground with sin. You are either fighting against it or you're being shaped and controlled by it. And so go back to that definition. Am I wrestling and fighting, or am I just kind of allowing it? And if I'm allowing it, I'm ultimately being shaped and controlled by it. My family is being shaped and controlled by it. It's impacting my relationships and my life. It connects to this idea that bad habits, right, like addiction, dishonesty, anger, lust, whatever you want to put in there, they don't stay small. Again, another lie. They don't stay small and they don't stay there. And if you don't confront them, they start to define your character and your decisions. And I want you to think about it like this. Like many of you garden, right? And if you're not intentional in gardening, what is the result? Yeah. You start growing things that you didn't plant, right? You start growing things that choke out what you wanted to grow. So this is no joke, right? Like it's like the people that are serious about gardening, if it's not an everyday thing, It's an every other day thing, right? It takes time. You got to see it. You got to pull it out by the root. And again, if you miss a couple days, you're going to be in there for a couple days. It's interesting that we can be so passionate about that, and then when it comes to us, we can be lackadaisical. So are you pulling the weeds in your life? Let's move to the practical. What would this look like? So I wanted you to leave with just, hey, here's some ideas of how I could be about killing sin in my life actively. All right, so here we go. Morning, I'm going to set the direction. Like, where am I headed today? I'm going to pray in an honest way. Like, Lord, here is the stuff I'm struggling with. You know it, but I'm just telling you. Here's where I am weak. It's greed, it's materialism, it's lust, it's gluttony, whatever it might be, I'm naming it. Yeah, I'm naming it. Pride, absolutely. So you name the sin that you're targeting. And you focus your mind with truth. Right? There's very quick searches you can do, like, okay, here's pride. Lord, give me some verses about pride. Boom, you have it at your fingertips. There's a verse I can meditate on throughout the day to fight that. Focus my mind with truth, right? So I can say, today, help me respond with patience instead of irritation, or whatever it might be. But that's how I'm starting my day. Lord, this is what I'm struggling with. I'm laying it down. I'm nailing it here. And I'm going to move with you through my day. If only it was that easy. But remember, this is a horror picture. Your life is a horror picture. What you thought was dead is going to come at you at some point during the day. And so it's really important that we catch it early, that we catch it twitching and moving towards us early, right? So I want to notice the first movement of sin, like a thought. Well, there's passages about that, right? You better take captive my thoughts and my thinking. A feeling, a temptation, and it's big that you interrupt it quickly. Like, don't let it settle. Don't let it set. Interrupt, pause, redirect your thinking. Say a short prayer. Okay, get that verse out that you Googled about that sin, right? And read through it a couple times. I want you to think about it like a campfire. Right? Those that camp, they understand the importance of, when you're done with the campfire, what? You better put it out. Like, seriously put it out. This is that idea. It's that little spark of a thought that could set my life ablaze. Right? And so it's this idea of capturing it before it becomes a full-blown fire in my life. Capturing it and putting it out, killing the fire, so to speak. We need to take concrete action, right? Avoid known triggers, like, here's the fall. But again, folks, if we always do what we've always done, right? You know that saying. So what are the steps? What are the patterns that I see in my life that lead me from sin nature to the flesh? And how am I putting boundaries in place? Right? Like, I'm not going to go there. Right? Like, I'm going to block stuff on my computer and on my phone. Put boundaries in place. Replace the bad patterns with better ones. I've always chosen this, but maybe that's the reason why I get there, so I'm going to choose this instead. So a couple examples. I can't get through devotions. Like, I'm continually interrupted. But what's interrupting me? this stupid thing buzzing telling me I got a text message, or the phone, or you're using the phone for your devotions and you get the text message. Right? So, again, I'm gonna take this stupid watch off, put the phone away, and go old school. Bust the Bible out, right? And go where there is no distraction. And depending on your season of life, it might be 4 a.m. when nobody's stirring and you're quietly walking down the hallway so you don't hear, "Dad, is it time to get up yet?" But where am I going to not be distracted? If I struggle with anger, there's going to be moments where I have to pull myself out of this equation. Right? I just need a second, and I'm going to go somewhere, and I'm going to breathe, and while I'm breathing, I'm going to pray. I'm going to say, "No, this is not right." And I'm going to fight against it, and I'm going to nail it to the cross again, and ask again to be filled with the Spirit, which is patient and loving. As we just said, again, you cannot just take off and be empty, right? Well, the beauty of Scriptures we see, and this was even in Jesus' instructions to the disciples about exorcisms, right? It's not just casting out. It's once you're free, you better fill yourself with something else. Something's going to possess you, right? Blake told me this week. Are you going to be possessed by demons, or are you going to be possessed by the Spirit? So what are you filling yourself with, right? When you empty yourself, when you nail that flesh again, that sin again, to the cross. So if I'm struggling with anger, I'm going to put that off, and I'm going to say, in this moment, I need to have deliberate kindness towards this person or towards someone. I need to be filled with that. So Spirit, fill me with opportunities to be kind. If it's pride, maybe I'm going to choose to be filled with gratitude for what God has done and what others have done for me. And if it's worry and anxiety, I'm going to take that to the cross, and I'm going to ask, Lord, let me know that you're with me, that your presence is with me, that I can trust you to meet all of my needs. So we replace, we don't just remove. Midday, lunch break, 1 to 2 minutes. I just assess the half day. Where am I slipping? Where have I fallen? Right? Refocus. Pull that verse out. Pray briefly. And set the second part of the day up well. And in the evening, I'm reviewing the day honestly. Right? Without hiding things. Where did I resist the flesh well? Where was I successful? Where did I give in, and why? And then I'm confessing that to the Lord. That's the beauty of Scripture. If I confess my sins to the Lord, He's faithful and just to forgive me of those sins. But it still means I'm fighting. I receive forgiveness. I don't stay stuck in that shame. And I make adjustments for tomorrow. How am I going to be successful tomorrow? How am I planning for success in my spiritual life tomorrow? It's not let go and let God. It's God is doing a work in me to sanctify me, but He's asking me to join Him in that sanctification battle. And then if you really want to go deeper, you look at the week. Okay? We go from day to the week. What patterns did I see in my life? Right? Same sin here. Same trigger. And I make a plan to address that root cause. I have a serious problem here. This is not just a once in a while thing. This is something I'm continually struggling with. And folks, this is hopefully where it gets a little bit uncomfortable. If we strive to fight this kind of thing on our own, we're going to fail. We have lost the community picture here of the church. And that is, sitting in chairs all around you are people who are striving to be closer to God that we need to bring into the fight. Is it embarrassing? Like, the enemy wants to tell you, oh, they won't understand. They're going to think you're a weirdo. They're going to think you're not a great Christian. But believe me, in chairs all around, you're all thinking of those things that you don't want anyone else to see. We all have them. So are you bringing people in, trusted friends, a mentor, somebody into your life to help you with those big pattern sort of things? Mortification or killing your sin, it's not beating yourself up. It's not trying to be perfect instantly. Right? It's a gradual weakening of sin's power in your life. And it's this beautiful process where we say, like, this is where I was, and look at what God is doing. Look at how I am working with God through this process of sanctification. And I'm more like Jesus today in this fight than I was yesterday. Praise God. That's what we're looking at. So we want to name it. We want to interrupt it. Right? We want to take it off, put it on the cross, replace it with something else, reflect on it. Why did I get here? How did I get here? Ultimately, kill it. But this is going to be a repeated process in our lives. It's a call. It's a challenge for us. Right? Again, this is not just what this percentage of Christians are called to do. This is what, if you call yourself a Christian, this is what we have to be about. And so I want to challenge us today. As I wrestled with this for a couple weeks, there are definite things in my life that I noted. I wrote them down, right? Because I got to be specific. These are the things, Lord, that I am struggling with, that I have maybe allowed to be in my life. I've confessed them, but I've let them set. And I know that it's impacted me, it's impacted my family, and maybe even you all. And I can't let that happen. And so today it needs to be different. If we always do what we've always done, we're always going to get what we always have gotten. And that's a true thing within our spiritual walk too. So you've probably noticed on the outsides of the chairs there's some paper. Some of the rows have a pen. I'm just challenging you. What has the Spirit been knocking on your heart today about? What is one of those things or two of those things that you're like, I've been comfortable with this. I've been lazy with this in my life. And no more. I want to battle it. Right? And I'm not saying that just coming up here, writing this down, grabbing one of these, grabbing this hammer. And nailing it to this cross means you're going to not struggle with it anymore. What that means is those things that I wrote, I'm not going to be passive about anymore. I'm going to battle. Like, it's going to take part of my day. It's going to take a lot of my focus. Some of those things I'm going to have to bring other people into. But I'm not going to let it impact me and my walk with Jesus. I'm not going to let it impact my family and their walks with Jesus. I'm not going to let it impact you because of something I've gotten lazy about. So again, this isn't magic. You don't come up here and nail it and you don't deal with it anymore. This is more about a commitment. Like I'm saying, I have struggles, but my commitment to the Lord and my commitment to this community is that I'm going to do a better job of fighting it. And so today is a challenge. Blake and Allison are going to come up and they're going to sing a song called Lead Me to the Cross. And part of that song says, rid me of myself. Rid me of myself. Rid me of that flesh and that sin nature that's haunting me, that's continuing to come to life in my life and grab at me. Help me to nail this to the cross. Help me to fight. Help me to battle. So what we're going to give you an opportunity to do is to use those pieces of paper to write something down. That's step one. What is the Spirit calling you to confess? Something that you've gotten too comfortable with. So just start with step one. Write it down as they're singing. Step two is, man, I don't like coming forward. I don't like people looking at me. But as I said earlier, we all have things, folks. We all have things to write on that paper. And knowing so many of you, there's no judgment. There's people praying over you as you're nailing this to the cross. I got little bowls of finishing nails and hammers. You know, we just celebrated Good Friday and Easter. The promise of victory over sin and death. This is a commitment to nail it to the cross. This is going to be my fight this week, these next few weeks. So I invite you, if you're so bold, to come up and take those things that you wrote down and nail it to the cross and head back to your seats. And then after the song, before we pray, we have something that we're going to be handing out to everyone. It's these keychains with a cross, and you can't see it probably, but the cross is made out of nails. So the message today is you're going to grab one of these, and where do I need to see this? Yeah, well, it could be. I mean, it is designed for that. It could be next to your bed. You could hang it somewhere where you see it. Like, I got to do a better job of starting my day, nailing things to the cross. Maybe it's someplace at work. I need that midday reminder to do this. But it's for you to put in a place where it's going to remind you of our call as Christians to mortify, to kill sin, to not be casual and okay with sin in our life. So as they start to sing, take a few minutes to pray through that. What are those things you need to write down? Step one. Step two, come on up here, nail it to the cross. Go back to your seats and pray or sing the song. But that is the challenge before us today.